ago, John the Apostle received a revelation from God, predicting the arrival of the false prophet and the man of sin.
The United Kingdom's Information Commissioner claims that in 2017, consumers will be cashless shoppers. A microchip holding personal bank account and credit card information will be implanted into the body, connecting to a database that will know who they are, where they live, what they like and what they don't like. Shoppers will have their hand scanned, not their credit card.
It was given power to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them. And it was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation.
The most powerful nation on earth is set to betray its citizens, with new mandatory revisions to citizenship and constitutional privacy.
A system touted as a national security necessity is being used to build a database where the biometric identity of millions of Americans will be gathered and stored.
We're meeting with the president in order to formulate legislation that would require every person in the United States of America who is employed to carry a biometric identification card with them.
And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. And that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name.
The president put in a lot of money in the stimulus package to advance medical records so that if you have the chip, you can carry the records with you. They can stick it in a computer. They can know all your situations.
They'll have a GPS chip in there so that they can measure everybody, every instant, no matter where they go.
Your ID card would have either your fingerprint, your thumbprint on there, or it would have a reading of the veins in the back of your hand.
No matter who you meet, if you say 666, all of a sudden they know what you're talking about. That means you're not going to be able to fly an airplane. You're not going to be able to enter a federal building. You won't be able to drive a car. You won't be able to open a bank account, and you are not going to be able to hold a job. Now, this is where the rubber meets the road. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration approved the injection of this chip under the skin. The technology is in place. It is happening right now. It's very important that all of us understand the mark of the beast is not a possibility. It is an absolute.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
They were acting on an ancient hope that is meant to be fulfilled. Do you not think an angel rides in the whirlwind and directs this storm? This work continues. The story goes on. And an angel still rides in the whirlwind and directs this storm.
To prove that the brain was in fact functioning normally while in this state, Dr. White needed to undertake a second experiment, during which he succeeded in transplanting the head of a monkey onto the body of another. The creature survived for 7 days before the body rejected the head.
In the monkey experiments, these animals are as much a monkey as they were when they were in their own original body. So I would presume, and I'd go beyond that, I would be assured that the monkey personality is retained. So consciousness can be transplanted. Obviously, personality, if you want to speak of the monkey having personality, can be transferred. And so you might ask, where did this bring us as far as the human spirit or soul goes? And I guess you could argue it can be transplanted.
Our constitutional journey did not stop then, and it must not stop now, Judge. And we'll be faced with equally consequential decisions in the 21st century. Can a microscopic tag be implanted in a person's body to track his every movement? There's actual discussion about that. You will rule on that, mark my words, before your tenure is over. Can brain scans be used to determine whether a person is inclined toward criminality or violent behavior? You will rule on that. And Judge, I need to know whether you will be a justice who believes that the constitutional journey must continue to speak to these consequential decisions, or that we've gone far enough in protecting against government intrusion into our autonomy, into the most personal decisions we make. Judge, that's why this is a critical moment.
We're going to go right back to Jan Crawford. She's had an opportunity to read more of the opinion. And Jan, what do you see?
Scott, we are processing what is in fact this complicated decision, but it appears the Chief Justice has joined with 4 of the court's liberals to uphold the mandate.
Jan, thank you very much. Headline of the hour. This is the most important thing that has happened so far. The Supreme Court has upheld the individual mandate, essentially affirming that President Obama's health care law is indeed constitutional. And the Congress did not exceed its authority when it essentially ordered every American to buy
common values, that we defend common interests, that we face common enemies. You know, for them, you're the great Satan, we're the little Satan. For them, we are you and you're us. And you know something, Mr. President? At least on this last point, I think they're right.
They change our lives in ways that we could never have imagined. Computer chips, GPS technology, the internet, all these things. You know, as humans, we can identify galaxies light years away. We can study particles smaller than an atom, but we still haven't unlocked the mystery of the 3 pounds of matter that sits between our ears. But today, scientists possess the capability to study individual neurons and figure out the main functions of certain areas of the brain. But a human brain contains almost 100 billion neurons, making trillions of connections. So imagine if someone with a prosthetic limb can now play the piano or throw a baseball as well as anybody else, because the wiring from the brain to that prosthetic is direct and triggered by what's already happening in the patient's mind. What if computers could respond to our thoughts, or our language barriers could come tumbling down? Or if millions of Americans
sit down with the mastermind behind this conference, Russian billionaire entrepreneur Dmitry Itskov.
How much can you add before you're not a person anymore? Where does, in fact, the consciousness lie?
Some scientists say that consciousness is just the computational process in your brain. We can just create the technology which will allow us to transfer our consciousness to the new body.
I saw your closing speech.
In this future, people will be young, beautiful. They won't suffer from illnesses and diseases.
You said the goal is to transform humans to godlike humans, and that you're looking forward to that transformation.
The #1 futurist on the planet, and has predicted such things as the internet itself. He predicted a universal search engine. And he is the go-to guy when it comes to the possibilities of life extension and incorporating technology into our biological body.
You are the figurehead in my mind and many others when they talk about the possibilities of the future, especially when it comes to downloading consciousness into some sort of an artificial body, an avatar, if you will. What are we looking at in the future?
The most important phenomenon in the future is we're going to merge with our technology. This is actually an expansion of my brain. Today, we might as well actually put this right in our brains. And by the 2030s, this will be the size of a blood cell. We'll have millions of little computerized devices, nanobots, in our bloodstream. They'll go into the brain through the capillaries. So our thinking then will be a hybrid of our biological brains with this non-biological expansion.
That's amazing. I mean, that's really hard to wrap your head around, the idea of having a bunch of little computers running around inside your body in 17 years.
The reality is that we're going to gradually become primarily non-biological. At that point, we are effectively robots.
There may be a future, and it may be very close, where there are no regular humans left. Or it may be possible that we are the last biological people ever. It's really scary.
Do you think by utilizing this technology that we're on the verge of achieving immortality?
We'll be able to overcome many of the things that make our existence too short.
If we don't want to end up obsolete at birth, if we want to stay the most advanced beings, there seems to be only one solution: to become robots ourselves.
Whether we like it or not, we're becoming cyborgs. We're becoming transhumans. Transhuman is an evolution from human to post-human, where we're no longer exclusively biological. So the cyborg is having all sorts of add-ons. Are we walking around naked? No, we have clothes. We have eyeglasses. We have earplugs. Now these are very, very basic, early add-ons to our biology. We're also having much more innumerable add-ons, prosthetic parts, inorganic hearts. We will see much more advanced prosthetics in the years to come. Eventually, we'll have entirely prosthetic bodies.
9 News anchor Brendan Keefe has more on these bionic soldiers and Marines. Brendan?
Carol and Clyde, we have finally reached the point where prosthetics aren't just a suitable replacement for a lost limb. They're actually stronger and have more stamina than the real thing. Yes, we're talking about true bionics. And you're about to meet the real $6 million man. Sergeant Smith and his bionic ankle have come to tactical defense environment. But more and more military amputees are staying on active duty and returning to the battle. A generation ago, nearly 98% of amputee warriors would leave the military. Now the Army says 1 out of 5 single amputation soldiers.
One option, placing a tracking microchip under a service member's skin. Former U.S. Special Operations officers tell us they believe that's being developed. Current military officials won't comment on that.
To become cyborgs able to compete with the rapid evolution of computers, we first have to understand how our own brains function. The research in this area has boomed in recent years. One of the factors behind this is the development in scanning techniques. They are now at the level that enables us to observe individual nerve cells at work in living animals. With this technique, we can see individual nerve cells make connections with each other and emit signals.
It's really quite jaw-dropping. It's beautiful when you look inside and see these nerve cells that have always been there, but never easy to see before in living animals.
This technique is used now by many laboratories, helping in their efforts to understand how the brain functions. Other scientists use a completely different approach. They take the brain cells apart and let them grow in a small dish on top of a computer chip. The problem with this technique is that it is extremely difficult to place each cell exactly on the right connection point. A team of researchers at IMEC has recently found the trick. They printed a pattern on the chip with a product that the brain cells love to eat. While consuming the product, the cells get stuck to the right spot and their tentacles are guided by the pattern. This way, the whole network of brain cells can be entirely controlled. Some scientists have already been experimenting with such brain dishes. Their chips were less precise, but their results sometimes remarkable.
Let me disconnect the light show.
Dr. DeMars, for instance, tries to communicate with his brain dishes and teach them several tasks.
So each of these dishes contains about 20,000 or so neurons, which are firing away as we speak. So each one's an individual network, and they'll fire spontaneously. We take living rat neurons, and they will rapidly form a neural network. And we have this grid of electrodes underneath the surface of these living neurons, and we can listen to the conversation among the neurons. And we can also stimulate activity within that network. We can send in different patterns of stimulation and look at how the network changes as a result of those stimulations. And that's how we do what we do.
What he does is to teach his brain dishes how to control an airplane.
The network can essentially fly the aircraft in a pretty optimal way. So it won't overcorrect too much, and it'll be able to stabilize it in a wide variety of conditions. I think I've programmed like a 50-knot crosswind into this one. It was what it looks like. You can see it, the aircraft, when it hits one of these crosswinds, how it begins to oscillate. The oldest dish that I've had is at 2 years. And the only reason why that dish died was because we were moving the lab from Caltech to Georgia Tech. Otherwise, that dish would probably still be alive today. Each dish has a characteristic, so you can learn to recognize one dish from another dish. They're demanding, though. You have to feed them once a week.
More and more, we will be able to measure and understand how our brain cells function. The ultimate goal is to create robots as small as viruses, called nanobots. These nanobots will be more intelligent than today's computers. One possible set of applications is medical. Nanobots could be injected into the bloodstream as a kind of cleansing team to kill cancer cells, for example, or to carry out other kinds of maintenance work in the body, or even to modify the DNA code. It might seem that this is a very expensive technology, but in fact, the opposite is true. We will be able to program nanobots to reproduce themselves, just as all natural creatures do. They will then be able to grab material from their environment and use it for making copies of themselves.
Well, the basic goal of nanotechnology is to build what's called an assembler. And this is simply a very small device that can make copies of itself. And it's a programmable device, so it can be programmed to build a wide range of useful things.
Officials won't comment on that.
In Rotterdam, Holland, nightclub owner John Van Gallen has introduced a system of microchipping for his VIP patrons. It's almost like barcoding people.
Yeah, it is, because every chip got a number, and the number corresponds to the name and the picture. That's the way it is, yeah, it is.
The microchip has to be surgically inserted under the skin, which means you'll have to have it cut out if you want it removed. Did it hurt getting the chip in? Okay, can I have a look?
Yeah, of course.
It feels like a little grain of rice.
It's a rice, yeah.
Irving has had the chip for the past 4 years. Every time he buys a drink, he's scanned. And, like a human ATM, money comes off his account. You don't feel like you're giving up a little bit of your privacy, do you?
No.
In the 1960s, Professor Jose Delgado took a normally hostile bull and implanted electrodes into its brain. Electrodes that could be activated by a radio transmitter. His objective was to see if stimulation of the bull's midbrain could short-circuit the rage signals, stopping the bull before it reached the matador. After the bull had recovered from the implantation and in mid-charge, the button was pressed. The bull's aggression ceased instantly. A clearer experiment was performed with cats. In this classic example, the hypothalamus, the rhythm maker, was implanted with electrodes. Could it be responsible not just for rhythms, but also for rage? The switch is turned. Then the switch is turned off.
He's a pioneer in neurorobotics. His research focuses on developing a brain-machine interface, a technology that marks the beginning of a new type of human, the cyborg, or human robot. But as always, it's tried first on rats, in this case a remote-controlled rat, dubbed the robo-rat. Adoption. A brain could control another brain via the interface. Two electrodes placed in the sensory cortex send stimuli to the area that corresponds to the rat's whiskers. If the rat follows a signal that directs it to turn left, it is rewarded by a discharge in the pleasure center. This discharge produces a release of dopamine, providing immediate pleasure. The pleasure center is also called the reward center.
The feeling of touch really comes from a stimulus inside the brain, so it's a
We too have a pleasure center, as well as a sensory cortex and a motor cortex, just like rats.
Here is the sensory part of my leg. Here is the sensory part of my hand. Here is the sensory part of my face. So there's a whole strip of sensation going from my face all the way down to my legs. Similarly, just a little bit in front of that, there's another strip, and that's the motor side. So this would be movement of my face, this would be movement of my hand, and this would be movement of my leg.
This is the starting point for the working of a cyborg. If one sends an electrical stimulus to the area of the hand, a phantom feeling is created. And in the same way, via the motor cortex, one can trigger an involuntary movement. The first brain-machine interface tests were carried out in Boston. BrainGate, a computer chip implanted in the brain, allowed volunteers to remotely run their computers with their minds, without a voice recognition system.
I'm going to open the first email, which says congrats. It says you are doing a great job. Next, I'm going to open the second email, which states hi there. It says, hi, we'll talk soon. Now I'm going to the exit.
Ethical gate to neurorobotics and all its possible civil and military applications.
Now close it? Now close. Right. Open. Close. Not bad, man. Not bad.
Research is partly funded by DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. Neurosciences will make it possible to model the soldier of the future.
This is a new deal, gentlemen. Enemy center of gravity is downtown. Should get a good view from here.
A remote-controlled soldier, one who could download important data into his brain while fighting, who could control his fear.
To research the days of Noah, because of all the times in the Old Testament, Jesus said it will be like the days of Noah. Explain to me, with all this research, how it ties in with the mark of the beast.
Well, the mark of the beast has 4 characteristics. If anyone takes it or receives the mark on the hand of the forehead, you can't buy, sell, or trade without it. That's the one we all know. The second one is men and women will seek death in those days but not find it. Well, what days? The days of the mark, which coincides back to or points back to the days of Noah. That lifespan seems to be extended. The third one is you take the mark, grievous sores appear on the body. Right. The fourth one, which is the most telling in my opinion, anyone who takes the mark winds up in the lake of fire. There's no grace, no mercy. You're in the lake of fire. And the same judgment that we see with the Nephilim in Genesis 6, Sodom and Gomorrah, and what happens in the Levant or Israel, the Promised Land, when Joshua and Caleb come into the Promised Land, it's always the same mandate. If a Nephilim is there, the judgment is always the same. It's total annihilation. There's never a shred of grace and mercy.
That's my question. Why would someone in their right mind that knows what the Bible says even consider taking the mark of the beast?
Because what is coming, this coming great deception, hinges on Darwinism. Darwinism tells us that there is no God, that we just evolved over billions of years. When Ben Stein sits down with Richard Dawkins, one of the premier evolutionists of the 20th and 21st centuries, and says, where did life come from? He says, Dawkins says, well, maybe millions of years ago in another galaxy, a race of highly evolved aliens created us and then seeded us here through the galaxy. That's what he believes. I call that the alien gospel. This is what's coming, and it dovetails into Darwinism. Scientists and the masses, when they show up, the coming great deception, and they will show up. They will have two things for us: free energy, which pilots the crafts, and the second thing is they'll have this DNA upgrade. And if a person takes this DNA upgrade, his DNA will become altered. Yes, he will have no diseases for 500 years or more. Yes, he or she will live and all this, but the problem is you are no longer human, you become Nephilim, and that's why the judgment in the book of Revelation is exactly the same as Genesis 6. There's a correlation between the two.
Now tell me about that recent press conference of the UFOs.
That was in Washington, D.C. Senators, congressmen, governors, Air Force pilots, people with top secret clearances all came on the record basically stating that the UFO phenomena is real, it's burgeoning, it's not going to go away. It's increasing in numbers. This is the coming great deception. What event can change everyone's worldview in a second? You see a mile-wide craft over your city, unless you know what you're looking at, you will be deceived. And Jesus warns us that even the elect would be deceived if that were possible.
Well, you know, we started out talking about the days of Noah. Well, Jesus says it'll be like the days of Noah, and you will not, he will come at an hour you do not expect. So the issue is not what we've been talking about. The issue is, are you ready? That's the issue. You can only get ready with God's supernatural change of DNA, and that is make Jesus your Messiah and Lord. Ask Him to forgive you of your sins because He died for them, and ask Him to live inside of you. It's not complex, and I tell you, your DNA will be changed to be the way God created you to be. If you like the way things are right now, then don't change. But if you believe there's something better, make Jesus your Messiah and Lord. Do you agree?
Amen.